Can you hear me all right? I hope it doesn't cause too much suffering. What does it mean? Christmas, love, celebrated. All the persons who became a part of the drama of the first Christmas lived their lives according to the word of the psalmist. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. For his steadfast love endures forever. Who can utter the mighty doings of the Lord, who do righteousness at all times? This is an apt description of the faith of the people who were participated in the drama of the coming of the baby Jesus. Joseph could have made a lot of trouble for Mary. The Jewish custom was that if a woman was promised in marriage to one man and she became pregnant by another, she could be cast out by her family and or even stoned to death. Joseph loved Mary enough that he would step aside and not cause her any shame. An angel appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit." So Joseph took Mary as his wife, but had no marital relations until she had borne a son and named him Jesus. We know that life is not a bed of roses or a picnic or a happy time, but life can be a struggle. There can be setbacks and struggles, and all of us, I'm sure, have experienced such things. And sometimes life can be so bad that it's beyond our imagination. An illustration of that is the classical movie that most of us enjoy seeing at Christmas. It's a Wonderful Life, starring Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed. James Stewart, or Jimmy Stewart, wrote an article that appeared in Guidepost 2015 publication titled "The Joys of Christmas." At his lowest point, Jimmy, as George Bailey, was praying, God, dear Father in heaven, I'm not a praying man, but if you are up there and you can hear me, show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope. Show me, God. These were the words of the movie script, but James Stewart, as George Bailey, said in the article that he wrote that he felt the loneliness, the hopelessness of the people who had nowhere to turn, and my eyes filled with tears. I broke down sobbing. This was not planned at all, but the power of prayer and the realization of our Father in heaven is there to help the hopeless. As I remember it, I should have looked at the film before I wrote this, but as I remember it, and I may be wrong, George jumped off a bridge. He wanted to end his life. God sent Clarence, who had failed so far to become an angel. He was a candidate. And so he showed up and he tried to rescue George out of the creek running below the bridge. And it ended up George had to rescue him because Clarence didn't know how to swim. The angel as Clarence showed George his life if he had not been born, And when George realized that there was some worth in his life, and that when you look at the total scene, both of the ups and the downs, George had a wonderful life. There's a line from a popular song, "People who need people are the luckiest people in the world." Well, my feeling is we all need people to love us, especially in a time of need. I know it's true in my life. I grew up in the years of the Great Depression, the 1930s. It was a time of children wearing hand-me-down clothes, dads being laid off and having to go someplace else to find work and move to that place. My parents saw, as poor as we were, that we had food on the table and something to wear to school. My experience was that my classmates in the same grade that I was in, for the most part, had fathers who were professional people, business owners, or workers in the oil fields, or farmers. There was no layoffs for them. My father lost his job many times and had to go through the process of finding a place to find work. I felt out of place with these classmates of mine who had so much, it seemed to me, and I did not make friends with them. I withdrew into myself and became a loner. For spending money, there was no allowance. I and my brothers knocked on the doors of elderly people in our town and asked if they needed any help. We came cheap, so we found jobs, carrying ashes out of the furnace during the winter and spreading them over the driveway covered with snow. Summer times we mowed lawns, not with powered mowers, the ones you have the push. We weeded flower and vegetable gardens, and there were many other things we could do for spending money. We didn't necessarily put it in the bank. We did what any child would do. All of these kindnesses of our teachers in school and older persons that let us do some work for them and pay a little bit. This was what I call love at work. Most of them went to church weekly and were believers who had the love of Christ in their hearts. And by them reaching out to us in those dire times of the 30s, that was love at work. One of the experiences I had at this time was I had no idea what I was going to do when I finished high school. I had a teacher named Arlie Wells. She told me, "You ought to go to college," which is a far impossible dream for me. She said that she and other teachers tithed, and they would help me with my tuition. Arlie Wells loved youth and befriended many. Here again was love at work, to encourage me who was at a loss what to do with my life. She suggested a small college in Kentucky where she had graduated. So I went off after graduation from high school to this college in Kentucky, along with my teacher and her teacher's friend helping with the tuition, and my working in the cafeteria and the library. I graduated in 1950. I went on home then, and Arlie phoned me from Kentucky and said small country churches were looking for seminary students who would come out on the weekends and hold worship services for them. She told me who to call. I have phoned and was appointed to 2 small churches. Most of the families of these churches were tobacco farmers with a small dairy herd. Here again, love was at work. The farmers accepted me, loved me, fed me, housed me, even though I had no idea what I was doing. I attended seminary, which was in the area of the college I went to, when I had money for tuition and worked in between, mostly selling vacuum cleaners from door to door, full of brush products from door to door. And that was quite something when you start out 8 o'clock in the morning, and and Michigan is much colder than this area, and but you had to be out there. One time I worked in an office in Cincinnati, Ohio, operating mimeograph machines. Notice, it wasn't it wasn't a copier as we know it today. And one summer I worked on a cattle ranch in South Dakota. I wanted to return to my home state and pastor, and I had 1 year left in seminary. I was interviewed by a district superintendent in Michigan, and they had no approval of the place where I had done my first 2 years of seminary. And they said, if you don't go to a Methodist seminary for your last year, we will reject you. Because of that, I came to Westminster Seminary, which is now called Wesley Seminary, and did my final year, and I graduated in 1956, and I was accepted by though they may have some question, but they took their chance and they accepted me into the Baltimore Conference. Here again was love at work. I'm here today because of all the love given to me by church members who had the love of Christ in their hearts, who befriended me and worked with me as I grew in the faith and became more helpful to them. Jesus began his ministry after John the Baptist was in prison. Mark in his gospel has an exciting account of that first day Jesus is doing his ministry. Jesus started off in a house synagogue explaining a portion of the Torah. Afterwards, he went to Peter's home for lunch, and he found Peter's mother home and in bed and sick. He healed her, and she got up and began to make lunch for Peter and the others. In early evening of that same day, people who had heard by word of mouth of Jesus healing Peter's mother, Peter's wife, I should say. But wrong, it was Peter's wife that was sick. They came by the dozens, by the tens, and by the 20s, and they gathered all around Peter's house in Capernaum. and they too wanted to be healed. Now, we're used to having the best of medical care available. These people had no doctors, no medical clinics, and the best that they had was home type of medicine. And they too wanted to be healed. And according to Mark's account, Jesus healed all of them. These were people who had suffered for years with various kinds of ailments. The day, is this thing still working? What I want to convey to you is that Jesus loved these people and healed them. And that was really love at work. And when we read the account in Mark, we don't get very excited. Okay, a group of people came to be healed by Jesus, you know. But the excitement of that day and that time in the evening when dozens of people were healed was love at work. And I equate the celebration and the excitement of those moments when Jesus healed these people as exciting as the first Christmas. And Jesus' whole ministry wrapped around the idea of loving people, people of all kinds. And there was nobody that Jesus turned away. And then, in addition to that, Jesus had called a number of men and some women who had to work quietly because of the times and the customs as his disciples. And he sent them off on missions to help people, to love them. It's, to me, a very joyous experience to read about the ministry of Jesus and all that he accomplished. There are so many people that were kind of marginalized, and he loved them, he healed them, he sat down with to eat with them, people that were rejected by the main line of people. Jesus knew that he was not going to live forever. He was either going to die a natural death or he was going to die in an execution, settling the people of both the Romans, who were the conquerors of Palestine at this time, and also the priestly group that ran the temple. And this is why Jesus called men and women to be disciples, to learn to love people and take an interest in people of all kinds, because he knew he wouldn't be here forever. We, in the 21st century, are disciples of Christ too. And we need to follow the example of Jesus. And my way of thinking, when we find persons within our families or even beyond our families who need a little loving, and we go out of our way to do whatever is necessary to help people that need a little loving and to show them that we love them, we are celebrating Christmas. Thanks be unto God. Amen.